halls of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 15 to 10 to 5. A touchdown, West Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tavon Austin.
But Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels fear to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back into the Country Roads webcast. We're providing you West Virginia sports content from Mountaineer fans for Mountaineer fans. Here today for our March 10th live stream as we get set to chat about some of the national media outlets and some articles they've put out in relation to WVU. We've got multiple articles from ESPN, multiple articles from CBS, and then we also have some details on the assistant coaching's salaries for WVU this upcoming season. We'll hit on here. That's kind of what I have planned on the slate. But as always is the case, of course, if you're in here live, feel free to send in a question, comment, concern there. Try to get to some of those at the end of the show. We'll hit on all of them from channel members. If you want to make sure yours gets addressed, you can send it as a super chat, but I'll try and hit on as many as I can, time permitting there towards the end of the show. Before we get into all the good stuff here from ESPN and CBS and all the fun things we got to discuss here in relation to WVU football, just a quick reminder, whether you're watching this live or on a playback, you should be subscribed to the channel to stay up to date with your WVU football news. Going to be a ton of it now that we're in the midst of spring practice. Plus, we're talking all WVU sports here with the WVU News Daily Show that we put out every Monday through Friday here on the channel. And you can also help out just by hitting that like button on the video, giving it a thumbs up, whether you're watching live or on a playback. Will help out with that YouTube algorithm so this video can find other WVU football fans like you and me. So with my spiel out of the way, we're going to get set to dive into this. Plenty of content here from ESPN and CBS. We've got ESPN predicting the starting quarterback for West Virginia. We've got a Big 12 spring preview from ESPN. We've got ESPN talking about West Virginia's high school class and transfer portal class. We've got CBS talking about some of their best returning players, and they mention, of course, a West Virginia Mountaineer, and talking about some of the better freshmen as well, where they talk about another West Virginia Mountaineer. And then a really interesting article from ESPN where they highlight someone you probably wouldn't expect. Probably a little diamond in the rough there. And, of course, we'll talk about those assistant coach salaries as well. So, with no further ado, let's get to it, guys. Let's start off here with the Big 12 spring preview from ESPN. I think this is pretty good stuff here as they share a spring storyline, a position of intrigue, and a player to watch for every team here in the Big 12. So for West Virginia, they have our spring storyline here as such. It's been yet another offseason of mass roster turnover for the West Virginia Mountaineers under Rich Rod, with 50 players entering the portal. A lot of those probably by design is what I would add to that. West Virginia won't return much experience from last season's 4-8 finish, but it substantially boosted its offensive potential with the addition of FBS leading rusher Cam Cook. And they also mentioned DJ Epps from Troy here, which I think is interesting. I think he's going to make a difference on special teams, but certainly will be a player there in that competitive wide receiver room, as we talked about in yesterday's live stream, as Rich Rod highlighted in his press conference. And, of course, they say there might be significant upside with Oklahoma transfer quarterback Michael Hawkins Jr., who you guys know I'm a fan of him and Scotty Fox both. I think we're going to have a great quarterback competition. They say those newcomers should deliver a jolt of excitement, and it's fair to wonder how consistently successful the Mountaineers can be considering the substantial churn of onboarding 69 newcomers to a roster with only a handful of returning starters in 2026. Yes, I understand where they're coming from with that. My counter would be, I think that the newcomers you got this year a lot higher quality than a lot of the newcomers we had last year, and the reason that we have such turnover this year is because they wanted to kind of not clean house, for lack of a better term, but they really just wanted to improve the roster. You heard Rich Rod and Zach Alley talk about it yesterday, getting bigger, faster, stronger, more length, more athleticism, and I think they've done all those things with the roster turnover this year. The position of entry, ESPN lists here in their spring preview, they got it as quarterback. Of course, why wouldn't they? And that's certainly something we'll be following all offseason from now all the way through fall camp. They say West Virginia's ceiling this fall might ultimately be determined by the outcome of its quarterback battle and just how far Hawkins, Scotty Fox Jr., or Max Brown can take the Mountaineers. Interesting, we're seeing Max's Brown name being thrown into the quarterback competition more often here as of late. They say Hawkins joins the program after making 4 starts and appearing in 9 games in 2 seasons at Oklahoma. Flashing arm talent and legitimate rushing ability that could spark an offense that averaged just 21.8 points per game last fall, which was 14th in the Big 12. But Fox is likely to get a chance to fill the starting job he filled over the back half of the season in 2025 when he finished his true freshman year with 1,276 passing yards, 7 touchdowns versus 6 interceptions on nearly 60% passing, while Max Brown, a former Florida and Charlotte passer, offers a more experienced option. The Mountaineers need stability and a jolt of energy in 2026, and that could start with the winner of the program's position battle under center. Certainly definitely going to be a key, so I understand why they have that there as their position of entry, because it's certainly one that we're all going to be following. And then the player to watch, it's one that I've talked about a ton here on the channel, but never get tired of talking about him, and that's running back Cam Cook. The nation's leading rusher last year should give West Virginia quite a bit more than it had on the ground a season ago. In fact, and this is a really interesting tidbit here that they point out, Cam Cook's 1,659 rushing yards last season finished only 268 yards shy of West Virginia's team rushing total last year. That's how good of a season Cam Cook had, and he's already competed against Big 12 defenses, having spent 2 years at TCU before transferring to Jack State. And if he can replicate the running style that made him one of college football's most dominant rushers last fall, the Mountaineers will have a game-changing backfield talent, is what ESPN has to say about that. And so while we're talking Cam Cook, let me go to one of the CBS articles as well, and we can stay on that subject here. And this article is CBS made, it's called College Football's Best Returning Players that Bypassed the NFL Draft, and listed among these was Cam Cook, the running back for West Virginia. And some good stuff here from CBS. As they say, the FBS leader in yards from scrimmage with nearly 2,000, and of course rushing yards as we know. Cam Cook dominated at Jack State after transferring from TCU and now returns to the Big 12 with West Virginia. He averaged 5.6 yards per carry, 11th best among players with at least 200 attempts this season. And this next bit right here definitely highlights what Rich Rod was mentioning yesterday when he talked about Cam Cook and how he always makes the first guy miss. And this stat proves that, as he consistently broke tackles with 100 missed tackles forced last season and turned routine runs into explosive gains, 53 carries of more than 10-plus yards. With West Virginia counting on him to anchor the run game, Cook enters 2026 as one of college football's most dynamic and productive backs. And that should probably get you even more excited about Cam Cook this upcoming season. So pretty good stuff there. We've talked about the running backs and quarterbacks a little bit, so let's stay on theme with those two here in the skill positions as we go back to ESPN, as they also had an article predicting every starting quarterback in the Power 4, and here's what they had for West Virginia. They are predicting the 2026 starter for West Virginia to be Michael Hawkins Jr., the redshirt sophomore, of course, the transfer from Oklahoma, and here's what they have to say. Here's their reasoning. Why he'll start, they say, Rich Rod secured a dynamic dual-threat portal talent in Hawkins, who arrives from Oklahoma with 3 seasons of eligibility remaining. A former 4-star recruit, he made 4 starts for the Sooner as a freshman in 2024 and has accounted for 950 passing yards, 262 rushing yards, 8 total touchdowns in only 9 college games. Alongside last year's rushing leader, Cam Cook, who we just talked about, Hawkins has the potential to charge an intriguing run game with the Mountaineers in 2026 if he can beat out incumbent Scotty Fox Jr. for the starting job. And, of course, that's a position battle we'll be watching. They talk a little bit about that competition from Fox here as well. As they say, Scotty Fox, who started each of West Virginia's final six games, in 2025, completed nearly 60% of his passes for over 1,200 yards, as we talked about earlier. And then they also mentioned Max Brown, the former Florida and Charlotte quarterback, provides experience to a young quarterback room in his second season with the program. The Mountaineers also added 3 quarterbacks in the program's latest recruiting class, led by Jaron Hughley, the number 36 athlete prospect in the ESPN 300. And, of course, you also have Wyatt Walker-Brown there, and, what's the young man's name? How am I forgetting him? I love him. I love the guy from Louisiana, and for some reason I can't think of his name right now. That's going to bug me. I got to pull up the roster here. John Johnson. There he goes. It hit me. It hit me there before I pulled up the roster to look at it. Yeah, sometimes you just have that brain fart and your mind goes blank, but I really like John Johnson as well. Got a similar story to someone we may remember, recruited by LSU to be a defensive back, but was promised to play quarterback at WVU. So really excited about that. And 3 really good freshmen to go with some more experienced guys there with Scotty Fox, Max Brown, and Michael Hawkins. ESPN's going with Michael Hawkins. We'll see what happens with it. And while we're talking a little bit about freshmen here, this is a very interesting article because this is talking about kind of the top recruits, top freshmen, and they list, kind of each position here, quarterback, receiver, running back, all of that. And at running back, they list the number 1 and 2 recruits in the country, which were Scouting Cooper at Texas and, and then Hyder there at Michigan. But look at this. The 3-star sleeper they list at the running back position among freshmen is Chris Talley, the West Virginia running back, which I thought was very intriguing that they talked about him in this article. Amari Latimer obviously is our big-time get at running back, but I think that this shows around the nation that people think Chris Talley can be a really good freshman as well. And let's not forget, Sir Paul Cheeks. I know he's coming off the ACL injury, but West Virginia with some really talented freshmen coming in. And Chris Talley, we talked about his speed a little bit in yesterday's live stream, as Rich Rod pointed, both he and Martavis Boswell out as the speed guys. And I think ESPN talks a little bit about that as well, as they list him as their main 3-star sleeper at the running back position in all of college football. As they say here about Chris Talley, he is a prototypical scat back who wins with speed and explosiveness in spread offenses built on zone running schemes. West Virginia coach Rich Rodriguez found success with similar backs like Steve Slayton and Noel Devine in the past, so that's high praise right there in and of itself. Talley won't pound the rock between the tackles, but he's a home run threat once he hits the crease and gets out into the perimeter. There you go, talking about that speed a little bit there. So thought that was really interesting. And then I have still one more article each from ESPN and CBS. Let's go back to CBS here while we're talking about freshmen, because this one right here, they listed impact freshmen in college football in 2026. A lot of big names here in this article, and West Virginia got one in here as well, as they list Matt Sieg as one of the nation's most impactful freshmen. If you saw our live stream last night, seems like the coaches certainly agree with that, as Zach Alley had some high praise for him. Rich Rod had even more interesting things to say, talking about all the different positions he could line up, every side of the ball, essentially, defense, offense, special teams. Matt Sieg's certainly going to be used a lot and probably be an impact player this upcoming season. And here's what CBS Sports has to say, as they certainly agree, naming him one of the top impact freshmen in college football in 2026. As they have him ranked as the number 10 safety in the country and the number 110 player overall. So nearly a top 100 player here, according to CBS 247. And here's what they say. Though Sieg is ranked as a safety, he could truly play anywhere in the secondary for the Mountaineers. That type of versatility and his status as a borderline top 100 prospect should lead to early playing time, especially since West Virginia lost a litany of defensive backs to the portal, completely overhauling the safety room. I would not be shocked, and I'm actually expecting Matt Sieg to end up being a starter there. And then they say Sieg's background as a high school quarterback should help with the mental adjustment to college too, and that background is probably why Rich Rod surprisingly mentioned quarterback as a potential position he could play at times on offense. We were all thinking running back, receiver, running back or slot, which I think are the two main ones, but crazy that Rich Rod threw that in as well. Just shows how highly they value Matt Sieg and his ability. So that closes us out with the CBS articles as we talk about ESPN and CBS promoting the Mountaineers a little bit. Let's go back to one more here from ESPN, and this one's a good one because this is ESPN ranking the best newcomer classes, and they talk both about the high school and JUCO recruits and the transfer classes. And, using both of those, they kind of came up with a list of top newcomer classes in the nation, combining both of those classes, your high school and JUCO and your transfer classes. And they have West Virginia in the top 20 here in this article. As you see, West Virginia, they're at number 20. They're talking about the high school and JUCO recruits first. And here are some of the top recruits here by ESPN standards. These are some of the ones that stand out. They name Matt Sieg. They name Vincent Smith, a corner. They name, of course, Kevin Brown on the offensive line. They name running back Amari Latimer. They name wide receiver Landon Drum. I thought that was an interesting one that they threw in here. And then, of course, our two JUCO receivers on there as well, Kedrick Triplett and Keon Hutchins, two of the top JUCO receiver recruits in the entire country in this past recruiting class, as West Virginia really brought in some highly ranked JUCO players in this class. So here's what they have to say about West Virginia's high school and JUCO class. With a full year to work, Rich Rodriguez signed a huge class that is more in line with his vision for rebuilding the roster. West Virginia left no stone unturned, dipping into the high school and junior college ranks as well as the transfer portal. Its freshman class appears to have several quick contributors. SportsCenter next 300 signees, which we have two of those, Matt Sieg and Kevin Brown, were huge finds, and fans shouldn't have to wait long to see them. Both will play this year. Both former Penn State commits. Brown is the son of former Mountaineer offensive lineman Tim Brown and is a big, flexible player who could be plug-and-play option at either one of the tackle spots. Probably going to be on the right side, in my opinion. And then about Matt Sieg, they say he's a rangy, instinctive back-end defender, but could find his way on the field in a variety of ways in all three phases. Funny enough, we just discussed that, and I think that seems like the plan. And Smith, a big corner at 6'2", 200 pounds, which actually he's bigger than that now. Let me pull this up because I think, if I remember correctly, he is up to almost, I want to say 220 he's listed at on the university's official roster, which is just absolutely massive for a cornerback. He could maybe end up switching to, a will linebacker role or something with the size that he has currently. Let's see here on the roster if I can pull this up quickly enough and see Vincent Smith's size, because I remember when I saw it listed, once, they filled everybody in on the roster, and I was doing the WVU football roster updates here on the channel, I was shocked by how big Vincent Smith was. Let's see here. Where are you, Mr. Smith? Of course I can't find it right when I'm looking for it. But I believe he's listed at 220, if I'm not mistaken. It's pretty decent size. But that 6'2" frame as well goes with the length that we tried to add in the defensive backfield. Trying to find this on the fly. Of course, I'm keep scrolling right by it, I think. Yeah, but I believe it was 220. Let me see if I can pull up the recruiting roster really quickly. Here we are. Let's see. Where are you, sir? I know he's on here. 223, 6'2", 223 at corner. Now, that is a large corner, 223 pounds. Super impressive, especially, with him being highly rated on multiple recruiting services. I'm interested to see what happens with Vincent Smith, not only this year, but maybe in the future. As they say, he brings physicality and enough quickness to compete for boundary nickel snaps, that slot corner position, as he refines his coverage technique. And then they talk about Latimer, who's a well-built back with size and speed, who can push for carries over time. And then Landon Drum, who projects as an outside receiver with length and ball skills. That kind of excites me that they included Landon Drum in here with some of these other bigger names that we had talked about a lot. Landon Drum's not one that gets talked about a ton, kind of similar to what we mentioned earlier with Chris Talley. But I think that shows that even some of the recruits that aren't as highly rated still have, pretty high ceilings and are well thought of nationally. So that was their thoughts on the high school and JUCO class. Of course, this is a list of all the newcomers, West Virginia ranking top 20 here. And here's what they have to say about some of the transfers. And the key transfers that they list here are running back Cam Cook, quarterback Michael Hawkins, offensive lineman Karsten Cassidy. Interesting to me that he is the only offensive lineman they included here on the transfers. Defensive back Jacob Bradford, defensive end Toby Hostrup, wide receiver Teron Francis, defensive end Zeke Durham Campbell, and linebacker Tyler Stolsky. And then some thoughts here on some of the names they listed. Cook arrives as a true feature back candidate. He's played in 34 career games with 19 starts, over 2,000 rushing yards in his career and 25 touchdowns combined at TCU and Jack State. They say he's a shifty, elusive runner with burst through the hole and deceptive power to break first contact, and he rarely leaves yards on the field. He's a guy that always falls forward. He's a guy that makes the first man miss, as Coach Rod talked about yesterday. And they say he could give West Virginia's young running backs room a proven, productive anchor in 2026. The alpha in the room is what Rich Rod said yesterday. And then, of course, finding consistency at quarterback will be a key. And while returner Scotty Fox will have a say, Hawkins comes over from Oklahoma with game experience and could be the one to seize that QB1 role. The offensive line needed an overhaul, and several players, including Karsten Cassidy, who they list here in the article, could help overhaul the line. Many more transfers will play a role, and while there are many new faces, we feel the Mountaineers improved their roster for 2026. So there you go. It's not just me saying it, that West Virginia improved their roster. There you get it from a national outlet there at ESPN. So pretty exciting stuff there. And you still want to talk about the assistant coach salaries, which were revealed today. Multiple sources coming out with that. I've got it from bluegoldnews.com that I'll share here with you guys as the final, kind of thing that I want to share here. But let me get to some of your all's comments here from channel members and such before I get to that last article, as I wanted to run through what ESPN and CBS have said about the Mountaineers here lately, heading into the 2026 season. Thought there was some really good stuff there from both of those outlets, as high praise for a lot of the freshmen, a lot of the newcomers, and then even talking a little bit about our spring storylines here as we're in the midst of spring practice. So some good stuff there, and then we'll talk some assistant coaches. But let's get to some comments here. See Devil Dog in the house. Appreciate you, man. He says, like, share, and subscribe. There's no excuse for loafs in this webcast. Country, get to work, Mountaineers. Hey, that's right. That's right. No loafs. No loafs. I'm going to be hard on y'all just like Rich Rod. Can't have any loafs, because if you loaf, you play for the other team. That's right. That's right, Devil Dog. And we only play for the Mountaineers here. Appreciate you as always, Devil Dog. Kenny Evans says, great show, buddy. Thank you, Kenny. Good to see you, man. Good to see you for sure. Hey, what's up, Saito? Good to see you, Link. Let's see here. Eric Flower says, too much happy preseason stuff coming out. The Vegas line is going to get screwed up. Hopefully they're not listening to this live stream, Eric. I hope not, man. We still got my fingers crossed for, at the most 5.5, so I can lay down some good money on it, and man, you can get our money back for sure. Devil Dog asks, so which pundits do you think will do a 180 and say they were high on WVU after trashing us if we have some success, especially if we get through the UVA game unblemished? Oh, you know how that goes. Probably all of them. They'll say, oh, we were bought in on WVU from the start. We were trying to tell people. That's how it always goes, right? That's how it always goes. And then they kick us while we're down. It's one of the two always, for sure. Eric Flowers with a great point here, talking about the great Rick Trickett. Anybody can run behind a Trickett line. I could get 70 yards a game with some oxygen and a good IV mix. Hey, man, I believe it. Rick Trickett's a godsend to that offensive line, man. So happy that we have him. And that's a great segue into what we're going to talk about next, because you guys know at the end of last season, I put out a tweet, send Rick Trickett a blank check. Give him whatever it takes to get him here. And I definitely think they did just that. We'll talk about that more momentarily. Devil Dog said, I would love 10-2, maybe, but I think the floor is 7 wins this year, which would be not sucky. Yeah, I think the floor for me is at least 6. You could say the floor is 7. I think the floor is 6 just because most manageable and favorable non-conference schedule we've had in probably a decade. You should get at least 2. You should emerge from non-con no worse than 2-1, and you have the potential to be 3-0. And then you have a lot of Big 12 games at home, so there's no way you shouldn't be able to find at least 3 Big 12 wins, and that would put you 3 or 4 Big 12 wins, and that would put you at 6, fairly easily. So to me, the floor is 6, but I would love 10-2 as well, man. Give me all the wins we can get for sure. Kenny Evans with a good question here. Do you see us ranked in the top 25 this year? If so, when and how high? I think that, as you say you can see a 6-0 to 7-0 start. To me, it's going to be then, which, that'd be massive as well. If we just get ranked in the top 25, that would probably automatically make this season a success because, gosh, it's been forever since we've been ranked in the AP poll there. We were ranked in the coaches poll once during Neil Brown's tenure, but never in the AP poll. So, that's nearly a decade there as well. But I think it's going to be early in the season if it happens. I think if you get through the non-con unscathed, you can emerge 3-0. I like some of your matchups there early in the conference slate as well, with several home games right there at the beginning. And you could potentially get to, 5-0, 6-0 at that point. And if you get to, I think 5-0, I think it's going to be hard to keep you out of the top 25 at that point. So that'd be when I'd see it if it happens. But hey, fingers crossed it happens at the end of the season as well. We'd love for us to have such a good year that we end up in that final top 25 for sure. Eric agrees. Think we rack up wins fast also. And great point here. Rich Rod, 1.0 era. Year one, we were 3-8. Immediately flipped that record around to 8-3, and now he has options he didn't have then, and he's really improved the roster as well. And I could very much see us, repeating that, going from 4-8 in year one in the Rich Rod 2.0 era to going to 8-4. Now, will I predict that or not? We'll have to wait and see when August comes around and we bring back the Season Prediction Roundtable, one of my favorite annual podcast episodes. All right. I think I'm all caught up here in the chat now. So with that being said, teased it up a little bit there, especially when we were talking about Rick Trickett. But from Blue Gold News, WVU football assistant coach salaries. We got details on those here, which there's some changes. Then, of course, we have some new guys added to the staff. And funny enough, a couple of those new guys are now the top paid assistants on the staff as we pull this up here and talk a little bit about it. So a number of WVU football assistant coaches have new contracts for the 2026 season, and that is because there were multiple last year that were on one-year deals. One of those was Jack Bicknell. That's why you never heard anything about Jack Bicknell being fired or anything, because he technically wasn't. His contract ran out. They didn't renew it, and they went out and hired Rick Trickett instead. And so some of those other coaches that were on one-year deals had to, get new deals now. So with a couple minimal raises among them, but newcomers, Rick Trickett, the offensive line coach, and Jay Boulware, now the running back coach, top the assistant pay lists, which I don't know if that includes Zach Alley. I'm going to assume that it doesn't, because I think Zach Alley's making $1 million. But Trickett definitely, that blank check I was hoping that we'd send him, seems like they came pretty close to that. As we see here, the veteran offensive line coach, who's widely rated as one of the top in the nation, will make $800,000 this year. Significant, uptick from what we were paying the offensive line coach last year, and making him, by far and away the highest paid offensive assistant on the staff. Whereas Jay Boulware, the other there, will make $350,000, and that equals the top salary of coaches who remained from last season, which was Rick Trickett there on offense, who's also making $350,000 this year. Other new contracts. So the other new contracts were William Green, the defensive line coach, who will make $275K. Gabe Franklin, the safeties coach, and Ryan Garrett, the receivers coach, will both make $250K. And then we have Michael Nicewonder, the tight ends coach, Rod West, the corners coach, and Rhett Rodriguez, the QB coach, making $225,000 per year. Moving on to Pat Kirkland, special teams coordinator, who will make $150,000. And then Henry Weinreich, who is the nickel/slots coach, he'll make $120,000. And that rounds out the updates there that were obtained by Blue Gold News here in this article. And of course, Zach Alley, still remains the highest paid assistant, and one of the only WVU assistant coaches ever to make over $1 million, if not the only one. He'll make $1.5 million here in the second year of his 3-year contract. So that's an update on the coaches' salaries there for the upcoming season as far as assistant coaches are concerned, as we see a picture of the man, Rick Trickett himself there, and some good info there from Blue Gold News. Shout out to them for that as we cover a little bit on the assistant coaches for sure. But with that, let me get up on some of your all's comments one more time here before we wrap up momentarily. Let's see. Devil Dog says, even if he doesn't speak on it in public, Rich Rod needs to have the starting QB sorted by the game week prep this season. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that in the most part, but I'm in the camp right now, and I've said this before, and I kind of repeat it here again. I would not be surprised at all to see both quarterbacks play in the first two games of the season, where you have favorable matchups there in those first two games. I think by the third game they'll probably try and hone in on one more than the other, but right now I'm kind of expecting both quarterbacks to play, especially early in the season. Personally, Kenny Evans says they need to keep Alley. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. I got full faith in Zach Alley, and I think, this year will show that a lot, in my opinion, because I think we spent a lot of our, money, a lot of our more high-profile guys via the portal and such were on the offensive side, and they needed to be, especially on the offensive line, whereas we kind of had to be more strategic with the defensive guys that we brought in, is the way that I'll put it. And I think, some of those guys aren't high profile names, but I think Zach Alley got body types and, the type of athletic players that he wants there. And I think he's going to show that he can have success even with that. And hopefully after that, we can, spend some money and get some really big time guys for him on defense next season, as hopefully our offense will be more set with some of the, freshmen and stuff sticking around after this year. And I'll be really excited for that. But yes, let's keep him one more year at least for sure. We need to try and get that third year out of him. But that's the only thing with Zach Alley is, as Earth Ether agrees, keep Alley as well. That's the only thing for sure is that Zach Alley's going to be a head coach sooner or later, so it's going to be hard for us to keep him long term. But I'd be ecstatic if we can keep him at least 3 years. That would be a big win for us, I think. So that's kind of how I feel about it for sure. Do coaches and players make more for wins, etc.? I'm not too sure on the players. Coaches do have certain bonuses. I'm sure Rich Rod's is more tied to wins. I'd say the assistant coaches' bonuses in their contracts are probably more tied to statistical things within their position groups and such like that, I would say. But yeah, there are incentives in the contracts as well that can change kind of some of those numbers. Earth Ether says, I'm just happy we have Trickett. Serious, I won't be having nervous breakdowns every time we're on offense. Me too. I think, we had a lot of big gets in the offseason. The highest rated recruiting class in school history in terms of the internet era with the high school JUCO, top 25 portal class as well. A lot of impressive guys in both of those. But the biggest get of the entire offseason is by far Rick Trickett, if you're asking me. I agree. I'll feel the same for sure. Rich Rod said he has openings on team. Who are they after in position? Talked about that a little bit in yesterday's stream, Kenny. But what he mentioned was, I think they, in his first press conference, which I covered, he said they had, 1 to 3 spots if they wanted to add somebody late, which would be a JUCO guy or a guy already in the portal, obviously. But yesterday in the press conference, he was asked again about it, and he specified the positions would be in the trenches, either an offensive or defensive lineman, and then he wouldn't mind adding another running back as well. So O-line, D-line, or running back would be the position that if they do decide to add someone late in the mix there. All right, so I think that's pretty much all the comments from channel members. I appreciate you guys, as always. And you guys see the channel members in there with the custom WVU football helmet badges and such. And if you want to become a channel member, you can do that. Help support the show here. Helps me be able to keep the content coming. And you can do that with the join button down in the video description, or you can find that same join button over on our YouTube channel homepage. Of course, not only do you help me, though, more importantly, you help yourself. We do monthly member hangout streams at the end of every month. We'll have one coming here at the end of March. And once football season rolls around is when you get the best bang for your buck there, because I'll provide player grades after each game, snap counts after each game, film review after each game. We also do behind the scenes videos, a bunch of fun stuff there for channel members, and would appreciate you and your support to do that. But now that I've caught up on all the comments from channel members, let me see if I can get to some from the not channel members here. Fiona Biscuit says WVU 10-2 in 2026. Hey, I like the way you're thinking. You got the gold and blue tinted glasses on, as we like to say here on the Country Roads webcast, Fiona Biscuit. I like that a lot. Let's see. Anything else here? Fiona Biscuit with an interesting take, thinks Max Brown will start the first 2 games. Then a big surprise comes in Charlotte. That would be interesting. Just try and catch people off guard, let them think Max Brown's the starter and then pull out Hawkins or Scotty Fox against Charlotte. That'd be an interesting strategy. For sure. And hey, Max Brown's name has been thrown into the mix. They brought him up, so you never know. I think last year he was really battling injury. We never got to really see his full potential and his capability. I still think, Scotty Fox and Michael Hawkins are my favorites for the job, but you never know. Stranger things have happened, for sure. For sure. Appreciate you, Fiona Biscuit. And with that, let's see here. Here we go. We got some more rolling in here before we wrap up. Eric Flower says our O-line cost us 4 QBs last year. That was insane. Dude, I don't think I've ever seen the injury bug hit a team so hard as it hit us last year. Multiple positions you can talk about, but, the injuries at the skill positions was crazy. We lost Jaden Bray for the season. Like you said, we lost not one, not two, not three, but 4 different quarterbacks at different points in the season. 2 of them out for the entire season. We were down to our 5th, 6th string running back. I've never seen that happen before. And, some of that's bad luck, but the offensive line, not being able to protect the quarterback was a big part of that. Those guys were running for their lives back there for sure. So definitely that's cleaned up for this season as well. And I think when you had such bad luck with the injury bug as you had last season, there's only really one way for it to go, and that's to improve. That's got to be more in our favor this season. Hopefully, a lot more better luck with injuries for sure. Devil Dog 44, we do need a tailgate meetup. We definitely need to do that. If you guys are coming to the spring game, maybe we can try and do something there. I'll be there on April 18th. Always love going to the spring game for sure. So, but with that, guys, I guess I'm going to get up out of here. A little bit over 30 minutes, but that's all right. You guys were awesome in the chat tonight, as always. And as I said, these live streams will be coming more prevalent now that spring football is going on. We got a lot to talk about. And, of course, that'll continue. I think there's a press conference again tomorrow. If so, I'll be back with another live stream tomorrow. It'll be 3 days in a row. Pretty sweet. And that's in addition to, of course, the pre-recorded videos that come out here every day, Monday through Friday on the channel. Be sure you're watching WVU News Daily, where I'm covering all the Mountaineer Nation sports. They're, trying to keep you up to date with who's playing, previewing some games, recapping some games, all that fun stuff there. So check out WVU News Daily as a pre-recorded video every morning here, Monday through Friday on the channel, if you're not already. And, of course, I'll be back to chat with you guys again in the near future on a live stream, potentially tomorrow, if that press conference is indeed happening. I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see, though. But regardless, we'll have another live stream in very short order where I can chat with you guys again. If you didn't get a chance to chat live, you can always throw your thoughts into the comments there. I appreciate those interactions as well, and I will respond to you in text form in due time there. I always try and get to all of your all's comments. But either way, if you watch live or on a playback, take a second, hit that thumbs up button, help me out with that crazy YouTube algorithm, and be sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you can be notified when I go live in the future. You can get those WVU News Daily videos directly into your feed. All of that fun stuff is to try and keep you up to date on all the WVU sports here and talk some Mountaineer football and basketball with you guys in these live streams. But having said that, I'm going to hop off here for the evening. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. I'll talk to you guys in the very near future here again on another live stream. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.